Hey, what's going on? I'm Joe Cronin, and welcome to the Toss-Up, where myself and a group of panelists sit down, sometimes stand up, talk about sports, and have fun doing it. Today's topic is the NFL, so you know what to do. Buckle up. We got a great episode coming up on the Toss-Up. It's the most wonderful time of the year, and no, I don't mean Christmas. I mean the NFL season is nearing the quarter season carnival as it's week 4. The math used to make sense when the 16-game season was in place. I can't complain, though, because all it means is I can watch more football. Joining me to discuss an already pretty hectic and wild season is none other than Mr. Joe Brennan, Zach Browning, and Charlie Hurras. Gentlemen, pleasure having you on site today.
Pleasure to be here.
So, before we jump totally into things, like the NFL has rules, this show is going to have 2 very quick rules. Number 1, we're not going to sit here and talk about the Dallas Cowboys the entire show because we leave that to first take. And secondly, we're going to not talk about a certain individual who is the very best at what they do, they're nationally recognized, and their relationship with some random pop star. Anyways, now it's time to really just dive into it. 3 games into the year, we've seen some good, the bad, and the ugly, but we're going to start with talking about the great. Joe, I'll go to you first. Best team in the NFL, who is it?
When I'm looking at the best team in the NFL, what really stands out to me is the San Francisco 49ers. It's just a team that has the most pieces all around. You've got a great backfield, weapons all over the field, a quarterback that really just needs to get the job done, doesn't need to do anything crazy, and arguably one of, if not the best defenses in the entire league.
I wish we could kind of just sit here and talk about the 49ers all episode, how loaded that roster is. It's crazy. They got guys on every position who make plays game in, game out. Zach, best team.
You know, Joe kind of took mine. I was going to say the 49ers, but I'll rock with the Dolphins. I mean, they scored 70 points. I could stop there. They scored 70 points last week in an NFL football game. That's incredible. But you look at the receiving core, Jalen Waddle. I mean, so much talent all around the field. Raheem Mostert's playing great for them as well. Devon Achane as well. And then Tua, he's looked great since coming back. He had a rocky last season, but he's looked great this season. I think the defense for the Dolphins is good enough to where they can stay afloat with their offense.
I think there could be some worries about that defense. The Chargers were able to run for over 200 yards on the ground. That's a Chargers team that threw the ball 47 times in that win against the Vikings. But offensively, I mean, Mike McDaniels is looking like the next offensive guru in the NFL. Charlie.
I would say the Dolphins. The thing about it is I can't trust them. The team I can trust the most right now is the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, they were in the Super Bowl last year. They're proven winners. You look at Jalen Hurts, that combination with him, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, it's only getting better. The only thing I want to see is that consistency. A lot of times we see teams that lose in the Super Bowl, it's hard for them to get back. You look at the Bengals, they couldn't repeat it. So I want to see the Eagles continue with that consistency, and Jalen Hurts is on his way to an MVP season.
Yeah, Charlie, I'm going to have to agree with you. I think until I'm proven otherwise that the Eagles can't run it back to where they were and possibly even further, that's going to be my best team in the league. I mean, they have one of the most unstoppable plays in the NFL with the tush push, Jalen Hurts on the QB sneak. It's phenomenal. But we'll step away from the top end, move our way in. There's a lot of teams that are 2-1, 1-2, and even an 0-3 team that has looked solid. I'm going to ask you these teams, and you're going to tell me, is this a contender or is this a pretender? And give me some reason why. Joe, I'll go to you first. The Cleveland Browns, they're 2-1. They've gotten some good wins. That defense is looking tough. Myles Garrett and company on the front 7. It's tough. What are your thoughts on them?
I'm going to go pretender. I mean, coming into the year, I was actually really high on the Cleveland Browns. I liked everything they had to offer. I liked their weapons. I liked their run game, and that's where I got to stop right there first. Obviously, when you lose Nick Chubb, you lose the best running back in the NFL. I think he was due for a stellar year, and that's really going to hurt their chances. And to go on top of it, you're in arguably the toughest division in all of football. Ravens look great. Steelers look great. They've got so much competition in that division. I just don't know if they even have enough right now to even make it to the playoffs.
I mean, the thing is, they were able to take down a division opponent week 1 against the Bengals. They shut them out. Zach, thoughts on the Browns?
You know, Joe said it really well. I think that defense is just so good. I mean, Myles Garrett, we saw the replays. You saw it on social media. He had 2 players on the offensive line following him throughout the game. There's very few players in the NFL that garner that much attention. And then, like you mentioned with Nick Chubb, in my opinion, it's not as big of a loss as some people would assume. I think Jerome Ford can fill in adequately enough, and I think Deshaun Watson will be able to lead that team. And I think they have enough weapons in that receiving core to where the defense can shut down opposing teams and that offense can do what they need to do to go wins.
I think the only thing about Watson, he still seems like he's finding his footing on this team. And that was something when last year, obviously with the suspension and all that, heading into this year, it was like week 1, he's ready, but still seems like there's some holes in that offense. Charlie, what about the Browns?
It's the Cleveland Browns. I mean, what is there really to offer over the past decade? Sure, you bring in Deshaun Watson. He hasn't been all that exciting. Obviously, you mentioned the injury of Nick Chubb. That's the bulk of their offense. Without Nick Chubb in that lineup, Nick Chubb and then Deshaun Watson, I don't have that level of confidence in him as I would with a Joe Burrow or a Lamar Jackson. So I could see them making the wild card. Obviously, it's been a shaky start to start the season, but I am iffy on them.
I do think they might be able to sneak in as a 9-8 wild card team. They've allowed the fewest points and yards of any defense, and 19.5% is the percentage that teams are converting on third downs against the Browns. That's a pretty phenomenal statistic that they have going for them. Moving on to the next team, we're going to segue to the NFC North, a team that had some solid expectations, especially with the way everything turned out. The Lions are 2-1. Charlie, go right back to you. Dan Campbell has this team fired up.
Yeah, last year we saw some hope with the Lions. Obviously didn't make the playoffs. This year, a completely different team. Dan Campbell has completely transformed the Detroit Lions. There's hope in that locker room. I can see them sneaking into the playoffs and even making some noise. I think that's the most exciting team to watch in all of football right now.
The connection of Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown, it's really building. Zach?
And I think somebody Charlie didn't even hit on there is Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't think we've seen him be unleashed yet. I think Jahmyr Gibbs can offer so much to this offense, not only in the ground game, but in the passing game as well. He just gives Jared Goff another outlet to get the ball to.
It just seems like on the ground game, they haven't quite figured out their identity because they've liked to use David Montgomery. He's a veteran. He has some experience. But with Gibbs, when he gets the ball, he makes some solid plays, Joe.
No, Gibbs is so explosive. And when you pair him with a guy like Montgomery, that backfield can be absolutely dominant. I love that backfield. I'm a huge Jared Goff guy. But I think the Lions are contenders mainly just for one reason, is just the weakness of the NFC North right now. The Bears look like they're really struggling to get things going. I don't see Minnesota finishing above 500 this year. So they're really in competition with the Green Bay Packers, but they're kind of trying to figure things out as they go along, whereas this Lions team, they're trying to win. They're trying to win now. I really think the Lions could win 9 to 11 games this regular season, make some noise in the postseason. I don't necessarily know that they're going to take home the Lombardi Trophy. I'm not ready to get there quite yet, but this is definitely a playoff team that can make a run.
It just seems like the whole city of Detroit is rallying around Campbell and his troops. I mean, when he was brought in, he was already making noise in the press conferences when he was talking about how much coffee he drinks, how he wants to break kneecaps and stuff like that. He's one of the better personalities in the coaching world. We're going to keep it in the NFC North, another 2-1 team, the Green Bay Packers. Jordan Love under helm. Zach, will go to you first. What are your thoughts?
2-1 is a stretch. That game against Atlanta, the Packers didn't really win that game. The Falcons lost that game. But I do believe in Jordan Love. I think he's actually a pretty good quarterback. And I think that it's a young receiving core, but I think it's a receiving core that can be good. You've got Jaden Reed, you've got Romeo Doubs, you've got a lot of players in that receiving core that can do great things. And I think when Aaron Jones comes back, that's just another huge addition. Obviously, missing him a little bit with him being injured. But I think when Aaron Jones is there, Jordan Love can lead this offense. I think he's got a bright career ahead of him.
The defense of the Packers is really the focal point. Rashawn Gary with 3 sacks against the Saints. That was a huge reason why they were able to come back 17-0. Charlie?
I'm not going to lie. I was skeptical about Jordan Love. I wasn't the highest on him, especially after seeing glimpses of him years prior, most notably last year. But he's really come in. He's done a great job so far as a starting quarterback. He looks in control of this offense, I will say. The team has a winning record. I like the future.
Joe?
I don't just like the future, I like the present right now for the Green Bay Packers. You talk about the weapons they got on offense. You didn't even mention Christian Watson, a guy they haven't had. They haven't had Aaron Jones, as you did mention. Once they get these weapons back, that offense is really going to start rolling. Granted, you mentioned how they lose to Atlanta or win against Atlanta, but Atlanta loses that game. Kind of a similar one last week against the New Orleans Saints. They're getting a few wins against the NFC South, which I think is the weakest conference in all of football this year. So Green Bay has got a couple notches under their belt, which is good. I think they've got some momentum. They're building some confidence for their quarterback. Love is a guy that you're starting to see why they held on to him for so long and why they were okay transitioning from that Rodgers era to Jordan Love. I mean, he has been as good as you could ask for him to be right now. Would I call him a contender? No. Do I think they could win 8-9 games? Without a doubt.
All right, so as we continue with this middle-of-the-pack group, I'm going to start asking each of you just one team now. Joe, I'll go right back to you first. New Orleans Saints, 2-1. The defense looks very solid, but Derek Carr injury status up in the air.
Yeah, coming into the year, I was all over the New Orleans Saints. I was absolutely in love with him. I thought Carr was going to be phenomenal this year. He's been a little bit slow to start, and that shoulder injury is certainly going to set him back. But they've got everything they need. I mean, once Jamal Williams comes back, they'll have that duo with Alvin Kamara. You've got nice receivers on the outside and a great defense led by Cam Jordan. So I think they can definitely make some noise, but I do have them coming out on top in their division.
I think their secondary has proven that they are able to rise to the occasion. Zach, the Colts, they're 2-1. 2 wins against the, they've been winning. They've been figuring it out, and even with Anthony Richardson getting injured in 2 of those 3 games.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Anthony Richardson has yet to finish a game as a starter in the NFL, but you know what? That doesn't matter because the Colts are 2-1, and I think it's been seen through the first 3 weeks of the season. Gardner Minshew is most likely the best backup quarterback in all of football, and he can lead this team to the playoffs. As far as a contender goes, I don't think I can say a contender. I think winning the AFC South and actually being a contender are 2 completely different things, but I do think they could potentially shock some people and win the AFC South, especially with how the Jacksonville Jaguars have looked to start the season.
Now, Charlie, I'm giving you the team that arguably had the biggest noise over the offseason. They're 1-2 right now. Their lone win coming in week 1 off of a punt return touchdown. The New York Jets. Where do you see them heading this year?
I mean, that's a dumpster fire if I've ever seen one. Zach Wilson thrown into the fire once again. It was supposed to be Aaron Rodgers. The entire offense was supposed to be built around him. He goes down. The Jets are in a mess right now. Definitely not going to be a playoff team, but that defense could help them stay in games. I just want to see improvement from Zach Wilson. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to see it with how this offense is performing these last 3 weeks.
Now, you mentioned the defense. They have so many members on that team that could be Pro Bowl or even all-pro caliber players. Joe, I'll go to you with this question. The quarterback situation. You think the Jets just play out the season with Wilson? Or, I mean, they just signed Trevor Siemian, but that's not a great veteran to be able to sign. Do you think they try and target someone else who's better?
I don't really know what you can do at this point. I mean, if it were a couple months ago when you would ask me this question, I would have said, get on the line with the 49ers and see what they can do. But obviously with Trey Lance out of there, they're not going to trade away their backup after what happened last year and having Christian McCaffrey play quarterback. So I don't know what the Jets really can do at this point. You've got your guy. You really just need to try and ride it out with him, see how many games you can win. But this is really the same team that we saw last year, but slowly developing. You've got those young defensive players that are really coming to their own. You've got weapons on offense with Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, and you obviously bring in Dalvin Cook to help out the load. I just don't know what Zach Wilson can do, but I think he just needs to be a Stetson Bennett, Brock Purdy kind of game manager quarterback.
Bennett.
Georgia.
Okay,
I mean, when he had all the pieces around him, and you don't need to do anything flashy except throw it 4 yards, throw it 7 yards, just make the plays you're supposed to make.
When it's week 4 and you've already almost lost the locker room as a whole, it's not good.
It's not good.
If I'm the Jets and if I'm the front office, I give up. I mean, this season is not going to end well. It's
like
only
Coach
going to
Saleh
get
has
worse.
started to lose the locker room as well.
Yes.
Obviously, I don't want to speculate too much, but it seems like the defense is starting to get frustrated the way that he is riding with Zach Wilson. And obviously, you want to be able to ride with your young quarterback, just try and build up that confidence. Zach, what are your thoughts?
I think it's important what Robert Saleh has done. I think he's done a good job of sticking with his guy. Zach Wilson is his guy. He's the Jets guy. Like Joe said, there's not really any other options. I mean, you aren't going to go out and find somebody at this point in the season. And I think, to Joe's point, I don't think there is that multitude of weapons in the receiving core in the offensive game for the Jets. I mean, Garrett Wilson, yes. Breece Hall, yes. But outside of that, they're really lacking in the wide receiver department. You've got a almost 40-year-old Randall Cobb at this point. Oof. But I think if you're Zach Wilson, if you're the Jets, it's not there's a path to success. You aren't asking Zach Wilson to go out there and score 40 points each week. That defense is going to hold opposing teams to under 20 most weeks. You're asking Zach Wilson to go put 2 or 3 touchdowns up on the board. And I think with Breece Hall, once he's finally unleashed, he only has like 26 carries through the first 3 weeks of the season. Once Breece Hall is kind of built back up after his injury last season, I think that offense can run smooth enough to put up 2 or 3 touchdowns.
Now I want to segue into more of a rapid-fire question and answer. Biggest surprise player of the season. Could be a good surprise, could be a bad surprise. Joe, head to you first.
Give me C.J. Stroud. I was not expecting him to come out of the gates this hot. 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, over 900 yards through 3 games. He's looked phenomenal. And all while he's doing this with, I don't want to call it a mediocre wide receiver room, but there's no superstars in there.
Zach.
I'll go with T.J. Hawkinson. It's the guy whose team has not had that much success. But if you look in fantasy football, I know fantasy football and the NFL are not the same things. He is tight end 1, though. He's put up the production, and he's been a big target in that receiving group. And it's a team that added Jordan Addison over the offseason. I thought that would take away from targets from Hawkinson, but he's played really well.
Charlie.
I think this answer's simple. I think it's Puka Nacua.
There you go.
If you play fantasy football, you know who he is by now. 42 targets in the last 3 weeks. He's been that guy that Stafford can trust with Cooper Kupp on the injured reserve. And you see 42 targets. He's totaled over 250 receiving yards. He's been dominant for the Rams offense.
Mine is going to be a bad surprise. I'm picking Josh Jacobs. He has 108 yards in 3 games, averaging 2.5 yards per carry. He has a long of 10 through 3 games. Before we head to the break, I want you each 3 to make a hot take. One bold prediction you got. Charlie, go to you first.
How about the Bears? I don't think they win a game this year.
Wow.
I think they're 0-17.
The first defeated team since Cleveland?
You said a hot take.
Yeah, I did, Zach.
Slightly less hot here. My take is going to stick with my Indianapolis Colts. I'm going to say Zach Moss rushes for 1,000 yards this season.
Okay, Joe?
I'm going to say the Vikings don't win over 6 games this year.
Bold take coming from even a home team fan. That's
Yeah, I see what they've got to offer this year. It's
Surprising.
not looking great.
Mine is the Bengals go 8-9 on the season. They finished below 500. But stick around because right after the break, we're playing a fun game, so don't go anywhere. And welcome back to the toss-up. I said we have a game, and we do. It's called the Improbable Audibles. And you know, quarterbacks at the line of scrimmage, they're calling different audible reads to better their team. And how this works is there have been some pretty hilarious calls that quarterbacks have made throughout history, and especially recent history. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say the audibles, and what my panelists have to do, they have to guess who said it. Are you guys ready?
Let's do it.
First one is Purple Walrus.
I'm going to go with Kirk Cousins.
No.
Is it Matt Ryan?
No.
Joe Webb.
That was Derek Carr. Another one from Carr was James Harden. I told you these might be a little bit tough. Next on the board, this one you might be able to get it by the third audible. Apple. Nothing. Japan.
Eli Manning.
Nope. Nothing. Omaha.
Peyton Manning.
Peyton
There we
Manning.
go.
That's Apple, Japan, and Omaha. Third on the board, Balboa.
Wow. Okay.
Daniel Jones.
Nope.
I'm thinking it's a Philly
That's a good
quarterback.
guess, though.
I'm
Very good guess with
thinking in
Daniel
that
Jones.
region.
Is it Mark Sanchez?
No, think
Is it
Daniel
Eli
Jones.
Manning?
Eli Manning.
Wow.
Balboa. Another one that Eli Manning said was brown peanuts. I'm telling you, these are good. These are good. Next up, Snickers, Snickers, Snickers. And the other one is can.
I feel like I've heard this before.
At the line, can.
I think it has to be Ben Roethlisberger, Joe.
No.
I'm going to go Stafford.
Nope.
Jared Goff.
Aaron Rodgers.
Wow.
At the line, he used to yell can, especially in the LaFleur system.
Have we
Next
got
up,
any right?
Helen Keller. And the secondary one was against the New York Jets. This quarterback said Mike White.
And I'm thinking somebody who doesn't like the Jets.
Think of a top 5 quarterback in the league.
Okay.
Jalen Hurts?
Nope.
Josh Allen?
Nope.
Joe Burrow?
Nope.
Justin
Dak Prescott.
Herbert?
Nope.
Patrick Mahomes?
Patrick Mahomes is your
You could have
quarterback.
said top 1 quarterback. in the
I
NFL.
could, but I want to see if you could get it in the top 5. Next up, Elvis. Next is Tupac. The last one is Ric Flair.
Oh, that's Jared Goff.
That's Jared Goff.
Yep.
That's Jared Goff.
Yep.
I imagine you've seen that video.
Oh,
He
yes.
would just yell from the side.
Yes.
It'd be Ric Flair, Ric Flair, Ric Flair.
Yes.
The last one. I really think Zach's going to be able to get this. Seinfeld. There's 3. Don't worry.
Eyes are on you.
Kardashian.
So it's not Andrew Luck.
Give me Kershaw.
Oh, Matthew Stafford.
Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford and Clayton Kershaw were childhood friends. That's going to wrap up the segment of Improbable Audibles, and that does it for this week's show. Be sure to continue the discussion. Follow along with Instagram and Twitter at IUSTV Sports. With that, there's only one thing left to do. I got to grab it first. It's the football. Toss it up. I caught it because I have great hands. Find out if we'll catch it, but I did already. We'll see you next week.